Before we get started, I have a quick favor. I've been self-funding the Finding Genius podcast for 5 years now. I've done over 3,000 episodes. And as you can see on YouTube, we're up over 1 million views on the channel, which is fantastic. The next thing I really want to push on is to get up to 10,000 subscribers. Because once we do, we'll be able to put a donate button and we'll be able to solicit donations to help keep the podcast running and to also get the Finding Genius Foundation moving along. We have a big project studying anxiety, depression, and PTSD and working on a product to help people overcome these problems because I've seen them explode recently after the last 2 years of the whole virus situation. So if you would, please subscribe to the podcast. That would help us tremendously. Give us a thumbs up and check in the description for Buy Me a Coffee. It's about $5. If you could buy me a coffee, I'd really appreciate it. It would help keep the channel going, and I love coffee. Thank you.
Forget frequently asked questions.
Common sense, common knowledge, or Google.
How about advice from a real genius? 95% of people in any profession are good enough to be qualified and licensed. 5%
Go above and beyond.
they become very good at what they do, but only
0.1%.
are real geniuses. Richard Jacobs has made it his life's mission to find them for you. He hunts down and interviews geniuses in every field: sleep science, cancer, stem cells, ketogenic diets, and more. Here come the geniuses. This is the Finding Genius Podcast
With Richard Jacobs.
Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Finding Genius Podcast. I've got a great guest, Angie Grimm. She's a college funding professional. We're going to talk about, how parents can help afford college for their kids and how young adults can help afford college and not get buried in debt. So I think this will be a very timely, very interesting podcast. I have one daughter that's at university, so it's very relevant to me. I think listeners that are, coming into this range or are in the thick of it will benefit a lot. So welcome, Angie. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Rich. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, if you would, tell me a bit about your background first and then how you got into, college prep and planning and financial world.
Yeah, so I have been working with students and families for about the past 15 years or so. And that even includes my own kiddos who are now grown and out of the house, 25 and 27. So I've been doing it for quite a while. And I was brought into a financial firm in 2009. And the gentlemen who ran the firm were really focused on people helping with their, long-term retirement plans. But the college issue kept coming up over and over because anytime you talk to people or, parents such as you or me who have children they might want to help send to college, it always came up as one of their top two financial goals. I want to help my kids, with college, but I don't know if I can do that and still retire. So we took it upon ourselves to start studying the financial aid system, understanding the business of education, of how these colleges actually give out money year over year. How does the financial aid system ebb and flow, as well as, keeping track of their costs year over year. And so it's been a system of study and experience over the last 15 years, keeping pace with cost of attendance, how financial aid works, and then how can people cash flow college more and pay with less loans. So I had that opportunity, like I said, about 15 years ago. And as a financial professional, I focus on college planning. And then we help parents figure out how do we survive that and still retire on track.
Okay. So what are some things that parents can do early on when they're still in the application stage with their kids? What can they look for and how can they start prepping instead of just being blindsided by a tuition bill?
Right. I would say it even starts earlier than that. College planning doesn't start just in junior, senior year. You have to begin talking to your students when they're younger, possibly even, driving by colleges, talking about them. But the cost research is extremely, extremely important to be doing even before we have the application phase, because we have a little saying/joke in our world is we don't want your student to fall in love with the college before they fall in love with you first. And we've just lost sight, Rich, in America, of budget planning for school. We're doing more wants and needs that we have for school, not necessarily what's going to be a good financial fit. So even when you are in application phase, you've got to look at what are they going to charge me for 30 hours of tuition? What's the average room and board? And then you have to look at all the ancillary fees and possible travel and commuting expense as well as, personal expense. So you need to look at the whole year and then times it by 4 to see how are we going to be doing that. Where are we going to write that check from?
Is there much difference in tuition? Let's say you're likely to go out of state. Is there much difference or are they pretty much all the same?
Yeah, there is extreme difference in that. So I live here in Texas, and Texas is not a reciprocal tuition state, meaning if you border Texas, we're going to waive out of state for you to come in. Many of our tax dollars that we pay into the state coffers fund our Texas public colleges. And so we as, residents of this state have paid into that. And so our kids get that in-state. But if you want to come from Michigan or Oklahoma or Florida to Texas, none of your parents' tax dollars have followed you. And so your out-of-state tuition is going to be higher. Same if our Texas student leaves to go to Arkansas or to Minnesota or to Pennsylvania. Our tax dollars don't follow us there. And so they have to get more tuition out of us because no state grants are coming in the door to help offset our child. So sometimes it can be double the cost to go out of state than what a public school would be in Texas, which ranges somewhere between $25,000 to $30,000 a year in Texas for a public institution. And we have a lot of kids that say want to look at Oklahoma. OU's non-resident is nearly about $50,000 as a sticker now if you want to go over to North.
Wow.
So you really have to pay attention to that out of state and do a lot of research to see, do they offer any type of scholarships or things that would help bring that price point down even to what you might be able to pay if you stay in your home state.
What's the range now for, private institutions like the Ivy Leagues down to like your normal OU type of school?
Yeah, so there's at least 10 universities in the country now in the Ivy Leagues that their starting sticker is $90,000 and up for 1 year of undergraduate work. That's exorbitant, right? $90,000. We have one school in our state in Texas, SMU, that's getting close to that. They're about 86, 87. And so is Rice. It's climbing up there. But here in Texas, if you want to look at University of Texas, which is one of our flagship public colleges, or Texas A&M, it's roughly about $30,000 a year out of pocket.
You're saying the Ivy League schools, and they're going up to $90,000 a year?
Yes. Yep.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it's exorbitant, Rich. I mean, because you don't even get out that 4-year degree. You're not coming out being called a doctor or a lawyer or, an anesthesiologist. You just have your Bachelor of Science or your Bachelor of Arts for that type of price tag. It's exorbitant and almost criminal in my point of view.
And what about in-state tuition ranges? What do those range from?
Yeah, so in-state can, some colleges can range from $22,000 to say $35,000 a year. And that's pretty standard nationwide. But then what we feel is an underutilized resource for most students in their areas, maybe they should consider starting at their local community college. Across Texas where I live, it can cost maybe $5,000 to $6,000 is all for the year to go in and get your basics, get your feet underneath you for college, and then possibly in a couple years later, you transfer on to that university. Maybe you have time to push a little more money back, be in less debt for your student if you choose that option. But sometimes our students aren't open to that option.
Yeah, well, I think community colleges maybe look down upon versus these other schools, but in practicality, I don't know if you've been able to, see any side-by-side assessments. Are community colleges or are in-state colleges any worse than, the Ivy League, let's say? Is there really any difference?
Nowadays, Rich, it's really not. That's, kind of a decades-old, really, to be candid. Your community college has to be accredited. They're hiring accredited people to teach, whether they have their master's or their doctorate. You can find some really tenured professors sometimes at these community colleges who've chosen they want to focus on a smaller classroom experience. They don't want to work for a large university, and they've chosen to teach at these smaller schools and really pour in to that section of student. And you're going to have, like I said, an accredited experience. And for most community colleges in any state, should be 100% transferable of credits to any public university in your same state. So it can be a very seamless transition if you start there and then finish somewhere else.
What about, we were talking about this offline briefly. If, you send your kid to an out-of-state school, is there a fast track to getting them to become a resident and then qualify for in-state tuition? What does that look like? How long and what's involved?
Yeah, the short answer to that is there a fast track? No. We have that many times with Texas students wanting to go up, over to Oklahoma. And if you start doing the research, Oklahoma will talk about, well, we have to make sure you're going to be vested in staying in the state, that you're really not just coming here for school and then you're leaving. So sometimes states will have a provision is you move here, you would need to establish residency for a year here, not going to school, meaning get a job, work, rent an apartment, see how you do. Sometimes that can be a viable strategy. But in my experience, most out-of-state colleges don't hardly ever let that student get into that resident tuition track. There are some exceptions to that.
Well, how could they fight it? I mean, to qualify as a resident of a state, what's the typical qualification? How could they say, you have to go above and beyond that?
Before we continue, I've been personally funding the Finding Genius podcast for 4.5 years now, which has led to 2,700 plus interviews of clinicians, researchers, scientists, CEOs, and other amazing people who are working to advance science and improve our lives and our world. Even though this podcast gets 100,000 plus downloads a month, we need your help to reach hundreds of thousands more worldwide. Please visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click on Support Us. We have 3 levels of membership from $10 to $49 a month, including perks such as the ability to see ahead in our interview calendar and ask questions of upcoming guests, transcripts of podcasts you're interested in, the ability to request specific topics or guests, and more. Visit findinggeniuspodcast.com and click Support Us today. Now back to the show.
Right. Well, your parents have to move there. So let's say you are in Texas and you get transferred for your job to another state and you just move there and you're like, well, how am I going to get in-state? Well, yeah, your parents live here. You're still financially dependent of your parents. They're working here. They're paying taxes now into the state. And so really, when you're FAFSA dependent of your parents and you're not married or you don't have a child yourself, it just really doesn't fast track you there to do that. But, it's state dependent and it's college dependent as well. But we've just seen in the last decade or so, it's not something that is a very seamless process to be able to achieve.
So what, for all of undergrad, you can't be a resident, even after 4 years, 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on the school, but I haven't really seen that happen for a lot of students. So it really just depends on the track and the place that you're at, really.
All right, so what are some strategies to help parents mitigate the cost if they can? What can they do?
Well, the key to paying for college is liquidity. And the sooner you start accumulating liquid funds that you can touch and feel and use, outside of retirement funds to be able to help cash flow college. But the other biggest component is proper school selection. Where is the best fit for our student academically and socially? And then what's also the largest financial fit? So there was a new article that just came out from this group called Inside Higher Education, and they did this nationwide survey about parents of what their concerns were. And the biggest concern they have is cost and how much debt their student's going to take on, which is not surprising. Like, it was revelatory that, parents are concerned about cost because they're footing majority of the bill. And if we don't have enough money as parents, we see parents fall into the wrong loans that they might co-sign for their students or the loans they might take on. So you really have to evaluate that cost and also be looking, where can we help our student achieve scholarship opportunities from these universities for our students, merit that they've achieved in high school, high grades, a stellar SAT score, their leadership, those different types of things. So spending time researching the universities that have scholarships is very, very important to find what's going to be a good fit for your family and really taking a hold of what's the financial aid process. What type of financial aid are you going to get? So participate.
What are the different types? From what I understand from years ago, there's government-backed loans, which have their own nasty provisions, like you can't even file bankruptcy to get rid of them. Then there's just scholarships, and then there's, I guess private ones, Pell Grants. I mean, what's out there? What types of financing?
Yeah, so there's 3 types of financial aid. There's need-based financial aid, like you were just mentioning. So if you demonstrate need, say a lower income family, you could qualify for some government-backed programs, say the Pell Grant or an SEOG grant, and then possibly some government subsidized work study, and then a subsidized student loan. So we encourage every family out there to apply for the need-based financial aid through the FAFSA system, because sometimes the merit financial aid that's going to get given to your student is dependent on your need-based eligibility or not. So we don't want to leave the college guessing and say, hey, we're not going to participate in the financial aid process. And then there's the second type is merit financial aid, which are those achievement scholarships from the universities themselves for your students, say test score, GPA, class rank, their leadership ability, music ability, athletic ability. And then there's also those outside scholarships that we can chase down online and do a far and wide search, as well as talking to your employer, looking at your local sources. The biggest ancillary scholarships are from usually local people that endowment funds that are in your local area, or say your employer. We want people to search online, Rich, but it's a far and wide search that you got to plan on only about a 10% rate of return.
Yeah, but how do you even find these opportunities? Like where can people look?
Yeah, so on the nationwide search, we found there's several good national websites. There's fastweb.com. Start making a profile for your student as soon as they hit senior year. There's another good site that we really like called Going Merry. It's MERRY, like Merry Christmas. So Going Merry was actually created by two students after college saying, hey, we were trying to find scholarships and it was an arduous search. And so many of the scholarships they offer on their site, the applications are built right into that Going Merry, and it'll send the student and the parent alerts each month of what scholarships are coming up and what are due. So you could...
Is it going Merry or Mary? How do you spell it?
Yeah, so going, just like you're going to the store, and then Merry, MERRY.com.
Okay, yeah. Like going in Merry Christmas, going Merry.
Yes, sir. Yes, yeah. Those are great searches that really, you start in your senior year, but, we talked offline, you have a student in college. Students in college tend to miss continuing searching on these sites and in their community for reoccurring scholarships that they might have an opportunity now that they're a proven student. Many endowment funds out there want to give money to a proven student. Now they're on for degree. And so sometimes that search just stops, and that can be an oversight where, you could get on those sites and really even help your daughter, maybe even now, look into some of those things.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, because, she has a decent GPA and all that. Now she's in her second year. So, okay, I didn't realize we can keep looking. That's great.
Right. Well, and also make sure she didn't miss any, didn't turn over all the stones and miss anything at the school she's at. Did we reapply for our scholarships? Do they have more? And sometimes students, this third or fourth year they're there, the department they're in, say in the business department or engineering or the mass comm department, you've done well and they have more departmental scholarships. That's what happened for my daughter as she continued on pace with her degree and was in more internships and more projects with the department heads of her college, inside the university. She got more and more money. Her last year, she got the largest amount of scholarships she had ever gotten because they knew her. They wanted to pour into her, and she'd been doing more things with those professors outside of just her normal coursework. So
that's great to know. Okay, this is very helpful.
Students need to get involved, and they need to know the dean of their college, and they need to know, because that's usually, what happens with in four-year university. At the end of your career there, you're in those classes of your major now, right? You're seeing those professors semester in, semester out, typically, usually in the same building, right? A lot of your same classes are in the same building your last couple of years. So get to know them. Don't just, show up for class and then leave and they don't even know your name.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I guess speak to your advisor, and if you build a good relationship with them, they can help you find things, like you said, within your department, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. And they have to pay attention to their email, right? Like when my kids transitioned to college, they weren't email savvy. They didn't know how to sort through emails because the scholarship department is sending them deadlines as a returning student saying, hey, reminder, the scholarship app is due by this date. I've met many students over the years who are like, they missed reapplying year 2, year 3, or year 4 because they just simply ignored the calendar and they missed it.
Right. So let's back up a little bit again for people that are going to be, they have a child that's going to be going to college. When should they start preparing, and how should they start information gathering and preparing?
Right. So, I tell people we specialize in late stage college planning, not because I want to, but that's when usually people want to think about it as early as freshman year. So the reason why that's important is because when your student's going to apply to college, summer into fall of their senior year, the college is looking at just a 6-semester transcript. So that's your freshman, your sophomore, and junior year coursework and all of your activities. The things you add onto your college application that you're doing senior year are just additions. What have you done up to that point? So understanding, do we need to take, more AP classes at our high school? Do we need to take some dual credit? Should I sign up, for one of these internships or, volunteer to be on student council? Should I take a leadership position, in my club? To craft a resume and a strong transcript in a 3-year period of time. And the way most high schools work is they're working just with your student on their high school track. You are usually not, as a parent, involved in those meetings, understanding, hey, maybe our student should take the AP chemistry next year, and your student signs up and thinks, I don't want to work that hard, and I don't know if I want to do that, but they think they want to go into, biomedical engineering. They should be taking an AP chemistry class in high school. And so take part in that with your student. go and meet with the counselor, with your student. Hey, we have these goals we think in the future to go, to these 5 colleges. Will we be competitive to get into these colleges based on what we're taking for those first 3 years of our high school? So be involved in that with your student. The high school works for you. Go in with your student after they come home and they say, you remember that when your students were in high school? Maybe you still have one in high school. Oh yeah, Dad, I got my schedule set up for next year. What are you taking? Oh, this. And you're like, okay. The high school counselors now don't really have the time to talk to your student and really craft that high achieving transcript. They just kind of go off what you say, and then they go through the process and get the next kid in for the next class. And then the financial piece, starting early in high school, is the more money we can help you set aside and start planning that will be earmarked for our future college expenses, the better.
Yeah, but isn't there a trade-off there? If you save a substantial amount of money and then you're going to go for financial aid, what if they say, look, you've got this money, you don't need the aid, goodbye?
Yeah, so there is some strategic planning that needs to go along with that. And that's one thing we are very specialized in and versed in. We're experts in that. So yeah, your traditional savings account or a 529 even will discount you for financial aid. But there are other asset classes that your money can reside, according to the Department of Education, that will be exempt from financial aid. And so we want people to start saving. But you are exactly right. We have to be cautioned about where that money should reside so it doesn't discount us in the future for financial aid.
What about if you have one in college and then another one's coming up? Does that help you at all, or it doesn't play into your ability to get financial aid?
Well, after last year, it doesn't help you. So the FAFSA Simplification Act was passed several years ago, and starting in the 24 school year, the FAFSA was simplified from about 140 questions down to about 38. So the form was more streamlined, but it's really the math behind the formula that also our legislators had changed. So prior to last year, the financial aid formula would typically give you a discount if you had students overlapping. When my son was in college, my daughter joined as a freshman. He was a senior in college and she was a freshman. So I had an overlap here. But when my students were in, this new rule hadn't passed. So we got a break on some financial aid, and our student aid index was cut in half. Well, now moving forward, the government formula is not going to give you a discount with your students moving forward. And that just changed as of last school year. The only schools or universities we're seeing that maybe adjust that are the very elite private schools that have large endowments, that it's their money they're carving out to give to your student, that could possibly take that into consideration for your family and possibly give you more financial aid. But the public schools don't have to do it anymore because of the legislation from the government.
Sure. Well, I'm glad they're helping people. Yeah, right.
Yes. We know it's not designed to help the majority of families that are trying to send their students to college. It's been very frustrating to continue to explain that to people, because then you're just forced to take the loans that they give you, and it's a frustrating process for sure.
So what does an aid package look like? Is it a combination of multiple things, or, I know, of course, it's different for every family. Yeah. But what does it end up looking like for many people?
Right. So, a financial aid package will come to your student. When you're a senior in high school, you file your FAFSA and you file your admission, typically in spring of their senior year, February, March, April. Last year, they came in May or June because of the FAFSA debacle, but that was an anomaly year. So they're going to offer you a number of things. So the first is every student, regardless of parents' income, is going to get offered a government-backed federal direct loan. Loans from the government, Rich, are considered a piece of financial aid. Doesn't mean you have to accept that loan, but every freshman student will be qualified to borrow $5,500 from the government, and it's deferred payback till 6 months after they graduate. Typically a lower interest loan than what's out in the private market. So you'll see that loan on there. And then you'll see any merit scholarships from the universities themselves for your students' achievements. They'll line item those out for you. And then they'll line out any other need-based aid, say maybe work study that you got from the government or not. And so they'll give you the full cost of attendance. They'll minus those things out. And then at the bottom of the page, you'll say, here's what you need to come up with for this next school year if you want to attend. So it will line item those things out for you. But what we try to help families do is we track over 4,000 schools in the country to give you aid estimates ahead. What piece of the aid pie are you going to get? Are you going to get any need-based, or are you just going to count all on merit? what are we going to get so that we don't get surprised by that in April and our students falling in love with it. And we maybe need to say, hey, this isn't going to work out for you or I to take this, because then we're going to be in a whole lot of loans, and so will you. You really need to involve your student too, because if you're asking your student to borrow, they should be knowing what those amounts are so they can, make some fiscal decisions. It's the first time we're really ever asking our student to maybe make a big grown-up financial decision.
Or a child, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the student.
No, thank you for it later if you do, right? We've seen the Diane Sawyer special, all these students on there saying, if I really would have known what this college would have cost, I probably would have chosen something different, because now I owe $150,000 for a bachelor degree. That's criminal in America that we're doing that. Now, no one twisted that student's arm to go there either, and to stand on the corner then with the sign saying, hey, forgive my loans. But we need to help our young people be educated on it and pick the right place, because you and I know that's not a smart financial decision for our 18-year-old to sign up for, right?
Well, like I said, the loans from the government are predatory. You can't get rid of them no matter what, even if you file bankruptcy. So to do that to an 18, 19-year-old that doesn't know better, it's criminal and predatory, I believe.
Yeah.
My words, not yours.
Yeah. Well, in the biggest predatory loan is the one they offer you as the parent. It's called the parent loan for undergrad students. That's the one that's the biggest predatory in my view, is because now parents take on the loan. You can never gift it over to your student. 60 days after you borrow, you have to start paying it. This year's loan rate is 9.8%. You pay a 4.4% origination fee to get that money.
Mortgage.
It is. That one is pretty predatory for sure. And I see parents year over year sign up for those because it's the path of least resistance. Rich, that also gets offered on that financial aid award. So mom and dad see it and think, oh, this is great. I mean, I have met people who've signed up for those and they truly thought it was a grant. They had no idea that they had to pay that back at the end.
Crazy. So what do you, if people want to look for someone like you, what are you called? What do they look for? And I want to give them your particulars, obviously, but
right.
Your profession, what is it called?
Yeah, so we are college funding professionals. There are tons and tons, as we know in America, people that are financial professionals or /financial advisors. But do they truly understand how the admission process works? Can, if you meet with that person, can they help you reduce your student aid index? If you can't, meet your student aid index, are they going to provide you with strategies on the best loans or the worst loans and the best way to cash flow college? And can they help you understand what schools are the right fit? So some people do talk about saying they can help you with college, but they just might want to push your money into a 529 and they tell you you're just going to have to take loans. I have met people who've met with a traditional financial advisor and they said, well, his or her best advice was, listen, John and Susan, you need to concentrate on retirement. Let your daughter borrow all the money for school, help her pay some back, but she'll be able to pay that back over her 50-year working career. And they say, yeah, that's right. We just got to focus on us. But then they fall into that trap of what we were just mentioning. Their student being in $100,000+ of student loan debt. I personally don't think that is financially savvy or smart to do. It's the worst college graduation present you can give your kid. Here you go, honey. Here's all the debt. Right. So
I understand.
That'll work for someone who's really, really specialized in this. And there's not that many of us. But, do they have a handle on being able to show you what type of financial aid you're going to get? Do they know, what schools are going to be a good fit for your student and how to bring other schools to the table that maybe you should be looking at that your student hasn't even been researching?
How do you talk about the results of what you do? Is it money saved? Is it interest saved? How do you express your results that you've gotten for people?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's quite a few things, actually. One, it can be the dollars saved. If your student aid index is too high going into filing for financial aid and we're able to reduce that, the student aid index is basically what the government says your family can afford to pay towards college before any other aid would kick in. Now you show more eligibility on paper to get some free money. We like getting free money, right? Also, some parents are positioned financially, the way they think they're going to pay for college will discount them from getting any type of tax credits for school. So when we counsel people on the right way to pay for college, that could increase their tax credits coming back to them. And then picking the right school, the budget fit for their school, understanding ahead, if we're going to go take this tour of Baylor University, in the future, could we even financially afford this with an estimate of scholarships and estimate of aid, so we don't let our student fall in love with that school when the price point is way off the chart. I liken that to that show on TV called Say Yes to the Dress. Has your family ever watched that show?
Yeah, I think my daughters probably have, and my wife. Yeah.
Right. So I have a daughter getting married soon. And when you go to the dress store with your daughter, the very first thing they ask you is, what's your budget? Because they don't want to put an $8,000 gown on your beautiful daughter when your budget is $3,000. Because now how's daddy going to pay for that? It's really the same thing when you're looking for a new home or a new property. If you're qualified for, say, $300,000 from the bank, your realtor is not going to show you that $1 million home because it's not in your price range. Rich, we need to do the same thing for college. We're on a mission at our firm to strategically help people plan to not overpay for college and not contribute to the student loan debt crisis. So we have to start investigating the cost of those colleges earlier and understanding, is this a good fit for our student based on the academics? Can they get through and can they get out and get a job? So saving them too on the right loans. If a family has to have loans, there are some good ones, I call them, and some bad ones. Where are the low interest rate loans? And then what's our plan to maybe get out of those before the 10-year amortization comes up? So we need to help parents look at their cash flow, help them understand how their retirement planning comes into that piece. And so finding the right fit school that could also increase their merit scholarships of places they didn't even think about before is huge. And then even SAT, ACT test prep. Sometimes 100-point difference on an SAT could mean thousands more in scholarship. But we typically let our student decide in their senior year if they need to retake the test or not. I don't know how your daughter was in high school, but my own students were not excited about taking those standardized tests multiple times. But
Yeah, mine either, man.
yeah, it's pretty common. No one wakes up on test day and says, yay, I can't wait to get to the SAT. But we have to be looking, at these colleges that if they can get another 100 points, 200 points, 300 points over the course of their junior into senior year, let them earn that money based on their academic prowess and their intelligence to go get a piece of that dollar. So that can help save our families thousands just by knowing what's out there and guiding them and their student on that.
What if you, maybe it's laughable, but what if you go to the university and be like, all right, I'll pay cash for the first year. Can you give me a discount? Will they just laugh you out of the room or what?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they want you to pay cash anyway.
But they don't care if you pay cash,
No.
they'll discount you nothing.
Not at all. Not at all. It'd be nice if they did, right? Because I caution people when they go pay the bill, hey, don't put it on your airline miles card because that processing fee of 3% they make you pay. So you're paying your $12,000 for the semester so they can eat there and go to class and live there. Don't put it on your credit card because that 3% fee is going to you. So you have to have the cash available, whether you loaned it from someone or it came out of your savings account. So, they're in the business of education, Rich, but they don't do much on the business side to give us any type of discount. That's for sure.
What about if you're a minority, female students? I don't know if there's any difference, but minorities, if you have disabilities, any scholarships in that area?
Yeah, when you go on those national search sites, you're able to put in a profile about yourself. So you can find those things to see if there's anything that you qualify for. The FAFSA does ask your ethnicity, and the FAFSA actually vets you on there if you're a first-generation student, meaning are you the first person in your family that is pursuing a bachelor degree? Even if you have a parent that, say, got their associate's degree or went 1 year to college and they didn't finish, you're considered a first-generation student. And so there can be specialized scholarships for that student that you have to search online for and take a look at those and even approach the university. That's okay to approach the university as well and say, hey, I am in this special category. Is there anything additional you could offer me? Ask the college. The worst case they can say, Rich, right, is no.
Sure. Okay. Well, very good. So, Angie, how can people get in touch with you for help? And again, when should they get in touch with you? It sounds like now, no matter whether their child's a freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, it doesn't matter.
Yep. You're never too early. And like we always say, you're never too late. I've had people engage with me even when their students, after their students have been in college a year, saying, maybe we missed something. Did we do this right? Where are we at here? Because we got our next one on the heels of that. So going right to our website, collegesolutionsllc.com. We are based in Amarillo, Texas. We provide webinars once a month. If not, now we're into the school year, sometimes twice a week, at least once a week, where parents can log into an online educational webinar we provide for about an hour. How does financial aid work now? What are the costs of some of the colleges in our area? What do we need to be looking for financial aid and scholarships to make sure we are doing the process correctly? As well as, if you hear us on this podcast and you just want to have a conversation, you click on the button, schedule a consultation with Angie. We'll talk for 30 to 60 minutes to see where you're at and to see if we need to start working together so we can, enhance your situation and save you on the cost. So going right to our website, get you right in the door talking to us.
Okay, well, very good. Well, Angie, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rich. It was a great conversation. I appreciate the opportunity.
If you like this podcast, please click the link in the description to subscribe and review us on iTunes.
You've been listening to the Finding Genius podcast with Richard Jacobs. If you like what you hear, be sure to review and subscribe to the Finding Genius podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And want to be smarter than everybody else? Become a premium member at findinggeniuspodcast.com. This podcast is for information only. No advice of any kind is being given. Any action you take or don't take as a result of listening is your sole responsibility. Consult professionals when advice is needed.